Welcome to the Jeff Bullish Show. Today I have with me Asim Razzaq. Now, Asim is the co-founder and CEO of Yotascale, which builds cloud cost management for enterprises like Zoom, Disney, and Okta. Prior to Yotascale, Asim was the head of platform engineering at PayPal. That's a big job, where he was responsible for all core infrastructure, processing payments, and logins. And I don't know how many people use PayPal today in the world, but it would be in the hundreds of millions, I'm sure. He led the build out of the PayPal private cloud and the PayPal developer platform, generating multi-billion dollars in payments volume. So Asim, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. And we might even talk about cricket, and most people in America around the world won't know what cricket is, but because you're from Pakistan originally.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. Cricket has those bugs, right? Those insects.
Yep.
No,
Yep.
that's a
Yeah.
different.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you a quick story before you tell me your story. My first tweet that I ever did in 2008 was watching the cricket.
Uh-huh.
And I had a comment back from someone and said, "What was the cricket doing?" And I said, "That's not an Englishman. It's not a Pakistan. It's not an Indian. I reckon it's an American." And it
That's
was.
right. There you go. There you go.
So Asim, you grew up in your child years in Pakistan and you did an undergraduate degree there. Is that correct?
I did my high school in Pakistan, and then I came to the US
To
for
do
my
the
undergraduate
undergrad.
degree.
Okay,
That's
right. So how old were you when you came, and why did you leave Pakistan for America?
Yeah, so I mean, I was 18 years old, like any freshman that would be entering college here. And the school that I was in, it was a lot of the folks did pursue higher education, either in the UK or in the US. And we also happened to be in a situation where some of my maternal family had moved to the US as well, so we already had some roots here. And ultimately, it was like a lot of people do, right? It's the dream you want to pursue because the U.S., especially the Silicon Valley, is considered the bastion of innovation. I was starting to get interested in computer science. I mean, obviously, I was relatively decent at math and sciences, and of course, that's why I ended up pursuing computer science. So I think that was the opportunity to come pursue a degree at a university, which is University of Texas at Austin, which is one of the top 10, uh, computer science departments in the nation, to kind of learn from the best in the world as to how it's done.
Yeah.
So that was the impetus for me.
So where did the interest for, digital and technology and engineering, computer engineering, where did that come from? Was it something that you explored as a teenager? Where did that curiosity come from?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I said, my original love was physics, right? When I got into my later grades, ninth or 10th grade, right? Pursuing a lot of that. And the reason was one of the teachers I had was just phenomenal at teaching the subject, right?
Right.
I still remember he would bring in like an actual engine of a car and put it on the table, and we kind of walked through it. And he would talk about the concepts like electromagnetism and magnetic relay and all that, but he would really bring it to life for you.
Mhm.
And I just naturally had a knack for mathematics, right? That's just how things were. My father is a chartered accountant, known as CPA here in the U.S., right? So math was always part and parcel of growing up.
Mhm.
But I fell in love with computer science. I remember there was a magazine on BASIC, which was a original programming language,
Yeah.
right, where you could code something and have it spit out something. So I remember doing simple stuff like adding numbers or building a simple calculator, and that was just phenomenal to see because it's really to me it ended up being applied mathematics, right?
Mhm.
Because you can make it do things, and that opened up a whole new um, sort of world for me. And on much younger years in school, I think Windows 95 came out, and then I also had exposure to a computer like Apple II as well, on which I did a little bit of programming as well. right? So I think that original love and passion, the seeds were there from a mathematics science point of view, but that bridging between applied math, writing a program that you can make it do things was what fascinated me the most
Right.
growing up.
Yeah. And the thing about, for me, I tried to do basic programming when I started an accounting degree before I turned to teaching. And I was crap at it. And I realized I was never going to be a programmer or an engineer. I'm more concrete rather than abstract. Okay. So when I went into the technology industry, I sold physical things called personal computers.
Uh-huh.
Not, I tried to sell software, and that was a terrible experiment as well. But so we're all wired a different way, and that's trying to find your gift, isn't it? In other words, why you are here. And obviously, you detected that, and then leaned into that, and went to, uh, the Texas University. What's the actual name of the university? Was it
University of Texas, Austin.
Yeah, University of Texas Austin. So you do the degree. So I'm fascinated by why people do what they do, and also does it make them happy? And just about everyone I interview would say, I ask them a question, and I'm going to ask you at the end of this, what brings you deep joy, and what would you do every day if you had all the money in the world? I'm going to
Wow.
that's your answer at the end. Okay.
At the end, okay.
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
glad you're giving me some time.
I'll let that sort of circulate in the neurons. So for me, after you've done the degree, what are you thinking? You're going, I need to get a corporate job. I need to get money to put food on the table, roof over my head.
Yeah.
What was you thinking at the end of the degree? What was driving you then?
So I think the timing is important, right? So I graduated in the year 2000, and so for some of us who are old enough to remember, that was quite a time. That's also known as the dot-com bust, right? The
Yeah.
boom bust cycle, at least the very first one of my career, if you will. And but where I'm going with this is that graduating in 2000 with a degree in computer science, effectively, if you were any good, would assure you a job,
Yes.
right? Is you had all of these companies that were springing up. E-commerce was just expanding like wildfire. Like there's a lot of companies that were getting into the business. I mean, companies like Amazon had formed like 3 years earlier, 97 or something, and eBay, and I think PayPal around a similar time frame. So interestingly, I was going to pursue initially, was potentially going to pursue a PhD because I did undergraduate research
Hmm.
with my one of the professors there. But I will say the pull of the industry was too much, and there was too much excitement in that
Yeah.
time that was going
Yeah.
around. So I ended up joining a early stage startup because I was always fascinated by the alchemy of entrepreneurship, of building something from the ground up and how does that work. And I was lucky enough to work with a set of people who are veterans, right? So they had been around the block. It wasn't, no offense, but it wasn't like some 20 something just starting a company and there's not a lot of experience that I can share with them or learn from, right? But
Hmm.
these industry veterans, they started a company and that's the one I ended up joining. And candidly, that was phenomenal, right? That the impetus was, hey, I want to learn,
Hmm.
right? And that's one of been one of my philosophies is to have a growth mindset. It's less about I want to have this great corporate job with a title at a company that people recognize and it makes you money and you sit there for X number of years, right?
Hmm.
It was more around, hey, life is short. Let's go learn as much as we can, and then maybe down the road I'll have an opportunity to do something on my own,
Hmm.
right? That was the key impetus for it, and I have to say, I mean, it was one of the best decisions I made because
Hmm.
while the company didn't succeed, like most companies in that time frame, I learned a whole ton because I had to wear multiple hats: software programming, lead build person, had the rotation duty of cleaning the kitchen, uh, so a number of those things.
Yeah. So it's interesting about learning, and compound knowledge. In other words, where you continue to build knowledge on top of knowledge until you turn up 20, 30 years later and realize I actually know quite a lot now, because you've followed this journey of compounding knowledge over time, lifetime learning. which quite often follows curiosity about something or a topic that brings you joy. Um, so uh, for me, you I've discovered too, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, is that you actually learn more from adversity than you learn from success. I'd be interested in your take on that.
I guess you summed up my startup journey right there.
That's where the inspiration came from. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So I think I absolutely would agree because I think, and I will say that can happen when you have the right mindset.
Yep.
Because a lot of people can look at adversity and just have self-pity and think about like, why is this happening to me? And, why not somebody else? But it's again back to that curiosity that you mentioned, right? You have to have that curiosity to say, okay, there's adversity, there's failure. I fell flat on my face. Why, right? And I think that also comes with some level of humility
Yes.
to have that introspection to say, okay, this happened, uh, could happen to anybody, happened to me, and what do I do? Where do I go from here?
Hmm.
And that's been my experience. The Even in the 2000 .com bust, after I kind of lost the job, and I had to land another job pretty quickly because I was on a work visa, right? I was an H-1 visa,
Hmm.
and there was a lot of people who were looking for jobs at the time, right? So the supply was huge, and you could say, well, it's kind of an adverse time, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate through it. But you roll up your sleeves and you say, okay, here's the situation. What do I do? And I learned, right, that we were talking earlier before the podcast about the human connection and, that ability to connect with other human beings, the ability to network with people, the ability to have that empathy, even if it is a company that's offering a job as to how I can solve this problem for them, the
Yep.
ability to how do you summarize their experience. I had to learn a lot of that stuff fast to be
Mm.
able to land something in the time frame that I needed to, because I didn't have the privilege of sitting there for 6 months, a year, or 2 years or something, and you know going and pursuing some archaic degree and then coming back and seeing if the market starts picking back up and then doing that, right? And I had to take action fast. So that's just one example of I think I maybe a different topic. Entrepreneurs have to embrace adversity.
They do.
It's not just about managing it. It's about you almost have to embrace it, right?
Welcome it.
Just
Yeah.
welcome it. It's going to happen, and it's just a matter of when. And in fact, in certainly an early stage startup, a lot of your experience is going to be majority of it is going to be adversity. So you have a special appreciation for times where it's not adversity.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the paradox of being human. You don't really understand, um, the good times unless you've had bad times. And that's
That's right. That's
and
contrast right
yeah.
there.
And we need contrast in life. I appreciate a sunny day more because we had a rainy day before. And just, for me, I love the contrast of life that unfolds around you. And like you said, I think it's welcoming it and welcome with an attitude. And you need the right attitude, isn't it? To going, what can I learn from this? And how can I actually then move on to, and the universe is telling me something. I may be the wrong person for this job, I'm the right person in the wrong job, whatever. But the reality is that you've got to bring that attitude to the table, and the poor me doesn't cut it really in terms of being resilient and adaptable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to learn from those experiences, and you have to also focus on what's in your control because not everything is in your control. And so,
In fact, very little is in our
that's
control.
right. That's right.
So, okay, so you fell on your face, struck some tough times. Just give us a quick thumbnail sketch of what happened over those few years, and right through to PayPal and that really big job at PayPal, and then let's get to Yotascale after that. But just a
Yeah.
quick. So, what was the journey like up to PayPal, and how was PayPal?
Yeah, so I think I ended up landing a job after that, the .com phase, if you will. And I'll just very quickly talk about experiences, right? Because this was a job at a company that was a startup that was building software for the airline industry. It's actually one of the best implementations of computer science that I have experienced in my career. So you had a bunch of these PhDs in operations research and data scientists at the time who were building some amazing software that would help airlines uh, really deal with uh, challenges like if there is a snowstorm that shuts down New York airport, right? How do you most efficiently and effectively route crew, route passengers, route equipment? And I can't tell you how mind-bogglingly complicated the problem is
Oh yeah, yeah.
because there are FAA regulations, there are airline regulations, there are maintenance equipment. I learned so much about the airline industry just through that job. And, whenever in an airplane now they say, well, folks, we have to deplane because of a technical issue, I kind of know what it is, right? Because a lot of times it means something went out of warranty or one of the crew just overstayed their allotted time by a minute, right? And then they have to fly in somebody else, what have you. So I think learned a ton there. After that, I followed my prior VP of engineering, my first VP of engineering, into another company that did professional services automation. And I'll say that's where my journey around building APIs, building systems where other systems can really connect to,
Hmm.
started in earnest. And web services was a thing at the time. I think IBM was making it really, really popular, and now they call it microservices. And don't get me started on all of that stuff, right? But um, that that was an opportunity to really help build software. It was also a turnaround, meaning that there's a lot of technical debt that had accrued at the company. But one of my main jobs was really making a monolithic legacy piece of software more API centric
Hmm.
because it had to integrate with the Salesforces of the world. It had to integrate with other enterprise systems. And that taught me a lot about modular design. How do you take legacy software and how do you object orient it? How do you make it API centric? But additionally, a ton about culture and people and processes, right? Because at the end of the day, the technology part tends to be relatively easy, but the part around where you have to motivate people and you have to really align teams and you have to align an organization while the business pressure is on you, uh, very difficult business pressure, right? Because the company has to still continue to produce software that is generating revenue and income while you're trying to fix the engine of the plane, if you will,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep.
So I think as much as that journey was hard, it taught me a lot about a number of things.
Hmm.
And along the journey, I've had amazing mentors and advisors and people who kind of helped me. And when I would fall on my face, I got into leadership. I was director of engineering at the company, and as as a naive first-time manager, I started by thinking like, well, I have to be the smartest person in the room every time, right? And to realize that that was a recipe for complete and utter disaster, right?
Yeah.
And that I had this delusion of being the smartest person, whereas I had to be more curious and see people's diversity in thinking and what they bring to the table. So I think a lot of that shaping happened, and I think that can bridge to the PayPal experience, which is circa 2007, 2008. PayPal was looking to start a completely new group within PayPal. So if you think about PayPal, it has had three key areas, right? So one, the first is consumer. We know that, right? Peer-to-peer, you can pay. Then was merchant, right? Like businesses can now take PayPal. And this third wave of growth that they wanted to embark on was developer, right? Providing payments APIs that developers can use in innovative ways. And so I was tapped on the shoulder to seed a team, a co-founding member of a team that would build that third wave of growth.
Hmm.
And my job was infrastructure, right? So build all of the tech stack, build some of the key APIs. And It was a phenomenal opportunity, but it was also a challenging opportunity because doing intrapreneurship within a large company is not straightforward and easy,
Hmm.
right? And so, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a term for that called intrapreneurship.
Right.
Yeah, so in other words, you feel frustrated, but so how can you actually act like an entrepreneur within a corporation. And that's a whole new skill set on its own, which I think you're alluding
Which
to.
is what I had to learn fast. All right, I had to learn
Yeah.
really, really fast. And one story I like to always mention is that so I was hired on, and we had some initial budget, and I was trying to build together like the sketch of the tech stack we're gonna have to build these APIs and whatnot. And I was assigned somebody from central architecture because at a company like PayPal, you're gonna have a bunch of different centralized groups, which makes sense, right? Because they're at a certain scale. And this person I met from 4 to 4:45, I think, every single day, the first few days of my job, for 30 days straight, because they were the one assigned to me to, my understanding was to approve the architecture and to approve us going forward, moving forward, right?
Hmm.
And so every single day I'm explaining to them how this is going to work and how it's going to be secure and how it's going to be scalable and how we can operationalize it, the whole nine yards.
Yep.
Then on day 30, I said, okay, so we covered it all. So, you're going to give us the approval. And the person goes, I'm not the decision maker. So that was the day that I almost wanted to quit. But I didn't. So it's back to adversity and resilience, right? So we had to work through some of the existing setup to try to bring in that innovation because we were bringing a new tech stack. We were bringing a new way of thinking. Because if you come to a financial payments company like PayPal and say, well, you know what, we're going to make these APIs externally available, right? A lot of people are going to scratch their head and say, no, 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 that's not something we do, what have you. But I think it was a really rewarding journey. There's a lot of things we were able to do through that journey, including a very flexible new age tech stack, including some new APIs. We actually put the first developer conference. We were given an extremely tight timeline. It was about 9 months from zero to launch.
Wow.
The launch was going to be uh, at the time seems like a ton of people. 3,000 developers were going to show up, right? And we met that deadline. And I think the most phenomenal feeling I had standing there, just observing and taking it all in as all these developers coming in, and we were all doing these sessions and
Mm.
putting the show on, was the internal PayPal folks, uh, how they turned from being jaded and naysayers to like they saw like, yeah, you guys were able to do it, and this can be done.
Yeah.
And I think that was a phenomenal feeling
Yeah.
uh, to have. And we continued to iterate on it. I think there was a lot of stuff on the mobile side. We built a mobile toolkit. The second conference that we put together was bigger. It was tens of thousands of people, right?
Wow.
And I think it was the first time in the history of eBay Inc., which is what was the parent company at the time of PayPal, that the stock actually correlated directly back to us doing that conference. So
Right.
the stock moved by about 10% that day because of the announcements that were made at that conference, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Um, so I think the impact was quite a bit, and again, I just want to be clear, it wasn't me, right? It was
A
the
team.
amazing team that we had, and a lot of support from the rest of the PayPal teams who wanted this to succeed. So I learned a ton about scale. I learned a ton about security. I learned a ton about building alliances. I initially failed at it in my initial part in PayPal, where I think we were breaking too much glass and alienating people, and then because just the timeline was way too aggressive, right?
Yeah.
And then we realized, like, look, no, we have to work a different way and take people along with us, even if it's going to take a little longer for this to have long-term success
Yeah.
and longevity.
Yeah. So,
And I
yeah.
was going to say at PayPal, I ended up taking on multiple roles beyond that, which we can talk about if you're interested.
Yeah. So let's maybe, because we're a bit short on time here, can we, was there a problem within PayPal? What was the call or the challenge that inspired you to start Yotascale? Because uh, you were working at PayPal, and where did you, what was the inspiration for you to cross the threshold from being a corporate engineer, if you like, to starting your own company? What was that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in my career, in my journey, I try to start something once or twice before, but I chicken out because it's not easy, and the right confluence of things
Yes.
has to be there. I think this particular one was more around. the advent of cloud computing, which had happened in 2007, 2008,
Yes.
right? AWS came out with S3, and then you had follow-ons from later on. Azure and GCP started becoming players into the ecosystem. And I had obviously roles at PayPal, but at some other companies as well, where I had my brush with public cloud computing, right? And especially at PayPal, I built out the private cloud, and there was manageability challenges with the private cloud and things of that nature, which my team focused a lot on filling those gaps. But the crux of it is that was this realization that while the public cloud computing gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of agility,
Yep.
right? It comes with this challenge of fiscal responsibility, which, as a
Yeah.
head of platform engineering, is a difficult spot to be in, right? Because as a head of platform engineering, what your teams are doing is they're building the foundational stuff that other teams are going to use, right? So these are tools and logging services and login services that other teams end up using, and they leverage the foundation to build their applications,
Yes.
right? So a normal response when you end up spending this money in public cloud is, well, you're spending all this money. As a head of platform engineering, you're saying, well, I'm not the one spending all this money. All these other teams are consuming all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this creates this friction between finance and engineering and
Yep.
application engineering and the exec types as to, okay, why on earth are we spending all this money, right? And if we are, where is it going? Who is accountable? And what do we do about it,
Yep.
right? And in that journey to PayPal, like one of the stops I had in my career was at a startup, a mid to late stage startup, where I realized very earlier on when I joined that 60% of the entire company's spend was in the data center,
Wow.
right? So they leveraged storage quite a bit, and the mandate was given to me as somebody who is cloud centric, right, to go and fix this and take the infrastructure into the cloud and make us more efficient, and we're going to win. And it was like, you got 6 months to do it, right? When I dug into that, I realized that it will be very, very hard for us to do because the cloud providers were not really giving you the tools, right? I would
Right.
have to up level the skill set of my team who did not understand cloud computing that well, right? And when we did the modeling, it turned out, believe it or not, that it would end up being more expensive than running it in the data center that we currently did, which was phenomenally, insanely expensive because as soon as you move the data, they charge you an arm and a leg, right? Storing the data was not that easy.
Yeah.
Storing the data was not that
Yeah.
expensive, but moving it,
Yep.
right? So I think that moment, as you said, was this moment of realization that the cloud is not going to save the company. We just don't have enough time, the skill set, the tooling that the cloud provider is saying that you should go develop that tooling, like they don't have that tooling out of the box. And I think things have improved over time. So I think I had to go back with the hard message that, sorry, we can't take this path, but we solved the problem differently using commodity hardware, right? Because we had a time of six months to go solve it. And I think that was the point in my career where you see the promise of the cloud and you see the fulfillment of that promise not really being met.
Yep.
And I think that was the key seed in my head as to, okay, something needs to be done about this, right? Because a lot of companies are going to get into this. And if you're not one of these big high flying tech companies who can throw money at talent at it, right? You're going to need something. And that was the genesis of Yotascale because when we scoured the market, we talked to a lot of people. The existing tools are very finance centric. It's all about reporting and analytics.
Yep.
And they were insulting the intelligence of a lot of the engineering teams,
Right.
right? So I think that's how the Euroscale concept came about.
Okay. In other words, you were working within a company that had this problem. There was a gap between what you wanted to do and managing it and what was being done, and you filled that gap.
Right. Yeah. You
Yeah.
fill that gap by giving
Providing
people
tools.
understanding of where the money is going and also optimizing it for them and helping them make their cloud footprint efficient because they can be very sprawl easily in
Yep.
cloud. You can end up spending a ton of money, but you only realize at the end of the month
Yep.
how much money you end up spending.
Okay. So did you self-fund Yotascale?
We self-funded for a short period of time
Mm-hmm.
just because we didn't feel comfortable going and raising money until we had our own conviction.
Yes.
just to do it in that manner. So we self-funded for 6 to 9 months,
Yep.
just to make sure we do the right customer discovery, have a good understanding of what we need to go build out, show some proof of concepting, and then go raise money. So that's what we ended up doing. And then, of course, subsequently, we ended up raising venture money.
Right. So let's fast forward to today. You've been running it now for how long? I think it's about 8 years, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So you've obviously built it out. Did you create a minimal viable product? And the other question I want to ask is, how is AI affecting you in terms of being able to solve problems, and how are you using AI within your organization? I'd be intrigued about that too.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think answering that question is twofold. Right? One is we are leveraging it for internally, which is when you talk about FinOps or cloud cost management, we built a copilot of our own. It's called the
Yep.
Yota Copilot,
Yep.
right? Where we're trying to minimize the friction, right? So if a CFO wants to come into a product and ask a question about, hey, why did the bill spike last month?
You can
And
answer
what can
that.
I do about it, right? You can ask that question and it will understand a lot of the nuances. It will understand the domain. It will give you the right data. It was not going to hallucinate, all that good stuff, right?
Yep.
And so I think our goal, number one, is where can we remove this friction in most places in the organization where they don't have to come run reports and click on a bunch of stuff, right? They just conversationally ask a question and they get a very precise answer.
Yep.
The other part of the AI piece is that it's just an extension of the problem space that we're already solving for, which
Yep.
is that now you have the advent of things like OpenAI, you have LLMs, and they cost a ton of money at the
Mm.
end of the day. And I think the ROI is a lot of times not clear, and the ownership is not clear. Like which cost center should this go to?
Yep.
And is this an efficient way of leveraging the AI, right?
Mm.
And I think we've done things in that realm where we do support some of these AI providers and vendors, so we can show customers the total cost, right? Not just their cloud and hyperscaler costs and their costs of other pieces of software like Snowflake and Datadog and others, right? But also, what is your OpenAI cost, right? And who's leveraging it and how much is it costing you and
Right.
what can you do about it?
Yep.
And I think that's going to dwarf, as you can imagine, the cost of cloud at some point.
Hmm.
Now, if the cost of cloud is bundled with like, okay, oh, this is running in the cloud, that's different. But I'm just saying, uh, these things are going to run up a huge and massive bill for a lot of companies, and especially in the next 12 to 18 months,
Mm.
as more and more of these are deployed in production, because we still see a lot of R&D, proof of concepting going on. The problem is going to get a lot worse, and that positions us well to help these companies to say, okay, now you need to reel this in, you need to have fiscal responsibility, and you need to make the self-service for teams to understand why they're spending so much money.
Yeah. In other words, you're providing visibility with your tools of where the money's being spent, and then using AI, you can look at different ways to maybe solve that, as well as I suppose, the expertise and experience of the team as well, and the tools. So, um, just to wrap it up, um, what have you learned along the way in your entrepreneurial journey? What are two or three things you'd like to share that have been your biggest learnings from being an entrepreneur at Yotascale?
Yeah, so I think the first and most critical one is that it's about the people, right?
Right.
That's the equation that a lot of people uh, don't focus on enough.
Yep.
And I have certainly made that mistake. So you have to have the right people with the right attitude who are a good fit for your situation. That's what
Yep.
I say, right?
Okay.
So not everybody is built to last in a startup, right? So you have people who can wear multiple hats. That's number one. Number two is something that I keep telling and professing to technical founders like myself, which is product building is not the same as company building.
Right. Yes.
They're two very, very, very different things. And so think hard before you start a company, and especially if you're going to be the founder CEO. Uh, do you have what it takes to continue to learn to be a company builder, not just a product builder?
Hmm.
Right? And I think a lot of technical founders, unfortunately, they run into that challenge of like they just build a product and they think that's what's building the company is about,
Yeah.
right? But the reality of it is it's across the board. And the third one I will share is you have to really surround yourself with amazing mentors,
Yes.
advisors. Uh, a founderhood is a lonely, lonely, lonely place to be, especially a CEO founder, because not that many people you can really talk to.
Yep.
And there's going to be, we spoke about adversity, a lot of challenges along the way. And so have mentors who are even keeled. So people can be of a couple of different types, right? They can be, they're always rooting for you regardless of what the situation is,
Yep.
which is not healthy either, or they're always criticizing you, or the ones that are always rooting for you and they will give you positive feedback when you need it. They will give you positive criticism when you need it, and they will be celebrating your successes, right?
Right.
So you need
Both.
somebody that can do that. And I think I've been absolutely fortunate to have some amazing mentors, advisors who have been extremely generous with their time and their advice. And I can never ever thank them. I can only pay it forward or try to pay it forward based on some of my failures that I've come across.
Cool. Thank you for sharing those three. Final question. If you had all the money in the world, what would you do every day that brings you deep joy?
Um, I would just spend more time with my family. I think that's what
So
brings.
it's about people again, isn't it?
It is about people. I think that's what brings me deep joy. It would be the human connection aspect of things.
Yep. Yep. Well, you just confirmed the 80-year-old Harvard University about the science says that it is people and community that bring us the most happiness, and
Right.
you've just revealed 90 years of research.
That's right. Yeah, spending $50 million on an amazing airplane gets old fast, and then you want two of these, and then you want four of those, and so it's a never-ending game.
Exactly. The game of materialism is never ending, and yeah. So, Asim, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I would like to have a longer conversation in the future. So, thank you very much for your time, and it's been a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff.